Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sankofa Video Books and Cafe. I'm Christina Joy, the events coordinator, and welcome to Scholar Hour. And tonight we have a very esteemed guest, Ethelbert Miller.
Thank you very much.
Of WPFW and the scholar activist you may love, and a poet. You do a lot of things. you be on the radio, you give interviews.
And here I am with you.
Here you are with me. Thank you for coming to Sankofa. I know you're a long-time friend.
Yeah.
How long have you been a friend of Sankofa?
Well, before Sankofa, I guess was an idea. I've always had, at Howard University for 4 years. And when I look at Haile Gerima, Cummings, there are people who, Sam Yet, we were just talking about, there are people that when I think about university, I think about certain people that affected my life. And I'm very happy that, I can still get that legacy going. I was very fortunate to come to Ethelbert College. They're very popular today. But, once you come to this like Howard University, it can change your life in a very positive way. And so, I love the fact that, I didn't come to Washington to be a poet, because I met people who across the campus, like Stone Davis, became a writer. So that's my contribution.
Right, being a writer and being Howard, where Baba High was for so many, both of you don't really like me. Yeah, but she's still here. We still across the street.
Still here, of course.
It's still sitting, and I was distracted by, but I really want to dive into how did you get started in this literary activist career, because this isn't necessarily your average career path.
Right. Well, you have to be right about that. When I came to Howard University in '68, so my parents, I wanted to be a politician. I wanted to go, political science stream. But because of the year I came, this is how history affects you. I came to Howard University right after the student protests in '68. Go back to 1968, you know that '68 is a key year in terms of world history. Beginning of the year, the 10th festival in Vietnam. We had assassination of Martin Luther King, assassination of Kennedy. Howard University had a major takeover. Okay, many times you go back to the 1960s and you're thinking about student movements, student takeovers. People think of Berkeley, they think of Columbia University, but Howard had a major student protest in which the demands were achieved. And so when I look at those demands, one was the abolishment of ROTC. Okay, one was the establishment of African Studies Department. That's what changed my life. I became one of the first majors. What happens is that you go back that year, changed everybody's life.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that when I came here, I had some of the people who were active in terms of this movement, like Myers, who's deceased, Jomo, and one person who's still there who affected me before I even came here was Tony Yates, who was involved in the movement. Tony, still runs the Black Film Festival. But what happened is that right before I came to Howard University, I was working at a place called Bookazine, up in New York. Okay, I was 17 years old because I graduated from high school early, and I was working at Bookazine, which is a wholesale distributor of books, and that's why I would meet Mr. Show from National Memorial Book. Okay, but then I was meeting guys who were coming up from Washington D.C., and they were members of the bookstore, Drummond Bookstore.
Wow.
Okay? And so here I am, in Charlie Carr, Cortland Cox, not knowing that these individuals were people who changed the South. Okay, when I was coming to Howard University, they almost became big brothers to me. And so when I came to Washington, I knew about Drummond's Bookstore. Okay, and so when I left the campus and went over to Drummond's Bookstore, which might have been on 14th and either you, I think, right around there. Okay, one of the persons working in that store that I would be Coach Andy. When you look up, a lot of relationships were formed back in like 68, 69. Okay, and then what happens is that I made a decision to be a writer pretty much my sophomore year. And I said, become involved in every aspect of writing, editing, publishing, so that was the thing. Now, everything happens a lot to do with coincidence. I always tell people, I only came out of university to find a wife. Right? And keep in mind, keep in mind, I think the ratio of women to men is still the one or something like that. Wow. So what happens, if you can find a really educated woman, our university, right? And what happened, I was walking across campus, okay? And this is where they used to give you a little package saying, you come to Howard, and if you decide you want to get something, walk in large groups, 5 or 6, right? What would be in your freshman, handout thing. I didn't read that. So consequently, what happened, one day when I'm walking on campus, I meet this woman who's gorgeous, Michelle from Chicago, okay? And she asked me a question right near 4th Street by the reservoir there. She asked me a question that if I had read my manual, I would have known the answer to. She asked me a question on a Saturday. Is the bookstore? I said, I don't know. Let's go check. By the time we walked from 4th Street to where the books were in the old law school, right there, where the school social right around there.
Shut up. Wow, you give me all history.
What happened by the time we walked, and it's a Saturday, the bookstore was closed. So now what happened, we had such a nice conversation, blah, continue to my call. And from that, we became inseparable. This is the catch. Michelle Calhoun's from Chicago. And she tells me, you should meet his brother who's teaching Douglas Hall, Don L. Lee. Hockey Mabuti, right? So what happens is that I would not be hockey if it hadn't been for Michelle Calhoun, who became my first wife.
Wow.
Okay? And what happened, Michelle came from a music family. So you Google Gardner playing Misty. My father-in-law is the bass Eddie Calhoun, bass player. Okay, Michelle's cousin Smokey Robinson. Okay, so what happened? All of a sudden, it's a musical family.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm sorry. She changed my life because she introduced me to hockey, and then she was introduced reading nothing but science fiction. She was one of the first people who was like a speed reader. She read The Godfather, the full Godfather novel in one day. Wow. She was like she consumed books like eating.
Right.
Okay? And what happened? That's changed my life. Okay? And I was very fortunate to be here in terms of meeting Steve Brown, meeting other writers, hanging out at the School of Fine Arts. And I would tell you the other writer who was a playwright in residence at that time was the playwright Clay. And I would hang out in Clay's office. Okay? And begin to know some of the people in fine arts. Now going back, dorm queen was Debbie Allen. Debbie, I think we call her underthighs or something like that. But what happens, when you look at it, F usually bridges does this. What happens is that I become the writer at that time, and then my first poems, which is the editor at Hilltop, right? Long before she became the editor, my first poems were in the Hilltop. Okay, and we know the Hilltop has that rich history because it was started by Hurston. Okay, so what happens is I'm putting my poems there, and this happens with timing. WHUR got started before I graduated, and they had a woman who was doing one of these shows in the morning.
Yeah.
And she said, "My name's Alfie. I'm gonna read a poem." She helped my audience. She was reading a poem that was in the Hilltop. She had that little voice, I can't even read my own poem. But what happened, I say that because you never know most of history. Yeah. That you just happen to be there. And if you keep those signs, that makes your life around. Okay. I didn't come to Howard, like that's jokingly to become a writer, because of all these folks, meeting Michelle, meeting Hakeem, all those things led to where I am today. What happens, this is very important. I didn't get into writing to make money. I got into writing because of what happened politically. Okay? I saw my work at helping the community. Okay? I was very key in terms of being introduced as a black writer. That's very, very important. And when I look around and I see the people that touch my life, I feel very good. because the Gwendolyn Brooks, Hakeem, Sterling Brown, the things they said about me um, were very, very important and encouraging me. One person I give a lot of credit for, life I affected, was C.L.R. James. James. I used to get James. C.L.R. James used to Chastity on 16. I used to get C.L.R. James his books and stuff. And then, because I was in the studies department, we were the first unit that had the field equipment. So we were videotaping people all the time. Yeah. So what happened, the first time we videotaped was Sterling Brown in this house. But then we all videotaped C.L.R. James, but living in the chapter. And then an elder will teach you things that change your life. Well, to interview C.L.R. James, he said, but Mr. James, you told such in 1935. He would say, 1936. He's very exact. Okay? And then, young, I am sitting here talking to C.L.R. James, who talked to Trotsky. You know what I'm saying? When you take in, you're in your 20s, okay? You listen to somebody to talk to Trotsky. I mean, you can't take, you have to say, how do I take this message, okay, and continue, okay? So when I look at C.L.R. James, boss, when I was a Negro too, I'm in my office, the boss calls me up and says, I want you to read what you read the Martin Luther King line. It's the father nation. Okay? And I, okay, wow. So today, this is 23, I make sure I'm a literary activist that if somebody is young and they have just one poem, I have to spend time to listen to that because that's part of the continuity. Because what happens is you never know where that person's going to be later. And there are the stories that we have to repeat. You might recall when Gwendolyn Brooks was very young in Chicago. James Wilton Johnson came to Chicago. And her mother called me Mr. Johnson. And Mr. Johnson, all respect for literary voices, but he had no time for Gwendolyn Brooks. And what happened is that, that would happen. A few weeks later, Langston came through town. Completely different personality. Langston stayed in touch with a young Gwendolyn Brooks for his life. Okay? There's a story there. See? That you have to remember, I'm bringing home, I'm listening because I'm a writer. I saw at Howard University people who would be filmmakers. Okay? And so when I think about Rima, there are people that came here who are well, AJ, Arthur Chipper, people like that, who were at Howard. And they were down in film. In the same way I was affected by Steve Brown, they're affected by Rima. And what happens is that you leave home as a young person and you go to get a education. And especially if you're the first person in your family, you never know how it's going to change. Okay? And if you're in the arts, okay, sometimes you wind up going back home to your parents to understand that. They love you, they think like, okay, writing, how you gonna make a living? See? They love you and they realize, okay, we slaving to get you to school. You want to dance? You can dance in the living room. So when you come back and you tell your motherfucker to be a filmmaker, like Spike Lee, somebody like he said, yeah, and you will have to your credit card to get that first film. And what happened? They give you that support, okay? And this is why, when I first met my father in works, I wanted to becoming a writer and an artist. And then people say, yeah, I struggled with my parents the same way that I struggled. Okay? And that's a thing where, you become a writer. It's a process. But at the same time, it's a responsibility that, I don't take for granted.
Whew, man, you just give so much. Especially as adult Howard. But
graduate degree? That's what I'm talking about.
And because I think about that my time Howard in an undergrad, I would sit there and talk about, Debbie used to walk around here and we used to walk around here. And you don't really like you think about that, but you don't see it necessarily. And until, Alicia just pulls up on campus and now she teaches there, so it's like a whole thing. But, the magnitude of being in that space at that age it's completely lost on you until you leave.
Sure.
And you're like, oh God, I had all this access. I was around all these people all the time.
That's why I was telling that joke earlier. I came in here. I said, back then I wanted to make sure that committed everybody who graduated from Howard became a lifetime subscription to the magazine. Because you would open a magazine back then. Somebody you could say, what? They had a such and such?
Yeah.
And remember they didn't go to class. You know what I'm saying? But, I say it because you never know where people are in life. Okay? And what will surprise you. And that's the beauty of life. Okay? It's also the sad thing to see, we read the paper, we see so many of our friends who didn't make it past 40 or 50. Okay? And you realize the illnesses. This is why I feel, on a serious note, that while you attend Howard University, okay, that's where you also should be, after 4 years, your diet should change. Okay? Your diet should change.
It did.
Yeah. What happens, your diet should change. Or what happens when they've been pushing that meal plan on people, okay, keep in mind that meal plan was not necessarily healthy. You might recall there was a point at Howard where there was an alternative food. Well, there was a food truck every now and then. She had the veg rolls, right?
Human impact.
Right. And what happens is that the changing student came with a different consciousness. Okay? Bottled water, that sort. And what happens is that it put pressure on the university food service to change. Okay? Because after a while, what happened, more people would say, I prefer what's being sold from these vendors as opposed to going into the cafeteria. What happened, it would change. But the key thing is that here, after 4 years, certain issues that the black family has to correct. Okay? Be more aware of cardiac issues, diabetes, all this sort of thing. And this is where what happens is that medical school, places that, we didn't need one that can probably do research. When you start doing, everybody starts saying the Tuskegee experiments, my blood for what? So what happens is Howard can have a responsibility where what happens is getting education, we have to make sure that we practice school. We're at the point now where Richard, they're on the board of trustees. April Silver should be on the board of trustees. Ross Baraka, after the mayor of New Jersey, went on the board, just like a Coleman. Because what happens is that when you look now, that's the only way the institution is going to change. I always remember I was in some conference down in Virginia, and somebody got up and said, Mr. Miller, take for Howard University to change, blah, 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 blah. And you want me to really answer that? Yes. And I said, well, these are the people who have to die. And I just listed the names. You're not being very respectful. But I knew what it took because I went through here and I realized you can't change people. Give me an example. GPA was not high. Okay? So, and this is why I went to school. So they were trying to help me out my department. That's the end. Like, okay. I was 1 credit short in economics. I was economics. And I remember, I went over to the head of economics to see if I could get this. One thing changed. And I'll never forget the conversation. I went in there. The guy was still older. I said, oh, wow. No. We're gonna let everybody out. I left this guy's room. And right there with the sundials, I said to myself, I will never let a Negro stand in the way of my future life. And I never went back to grade. I remember this guy. We'll let you everybody out. Something out like Amos and Andy. Okay, or Ralph Ellison, and this is Invisible Man. One of these things that you say, wait, I just want to get out of here. Okay? And this guy is standing in the way. Okay? I never went back. And I said right there, if I got another degree, it would have to be honorary. That somebody would see my service and say, hey, Mr. Miller, because it's such and such, we bestow this on you. And I told my mother that. I can still see my mother at Emory Henry College, that honorary degree. I gave that my mother, so she said, you said this. I said, yes, Mom, because There's no way I would do what you did. You, the seamstress, came my way, see, to college. And the most painful thing that happened is I'm so angry about this little nigga standing between me. When I told my mother that I was not going to graduate because I was credit short, she said, I don't get it. Okay? And what happened, my mother had that my graduation circled. Okay, circled. Okay? And for any black family, they don't know what you're majoring in. It's being on that the yard or the football field with that cap and gown. And this is why I tell people, okay, if one credit short, nobody knows. You can go get your cap and gown and handle it with the people. Okay? If you graduate several months later, it's not the same. Okay? And the fact that you put a piece for the hilltop on, that people should be permitted to graduate with their class, even if they're credit short. Because what happens, you owe it to your family, they want that photo. Okay? And to deny for some sort of like one credit short, like you didn't swimming. You know what I'm saying?
Swimming hill is all
right. And all of a sudden, you can't walk across the yard. And I say that because one of the reasons people becoming a writer was to write about these things. You see? So what happens is that if I pick it up in a joking way, I say, okay, this is something that needs to be told.
Man, that was an issue. Like up to I think actually my class was probably the last class that could still do that, and now don't allow that at all anymore.
And see,
again,
and that has a lot to do. You have to understand how community and what education means. Okay, I think this is the 120th year of the anniversary of the Souls of Black folk, and Du Bois is talking about education. It's not just a thing about watching this and that. It's about what education means. Okay, and that's the hope for so many people. And what happens, some people, it's a photo. Selfies and things like that. So many families just want to have that day. You see? And because of technically we deny a family that out.
And it takes so much for us black students to even get through college. The fact that, especially if you did it in 4 years, because like many of us don't get out in 4 years, or just don't go back to school. So it's like it's already enough for us to get there. It's like, why are you trying to move this?
Right. And see, the thing I talk about more now is that my family is my father was born here. Okay, so when you start dealing with the immigrant, that first person to go off to college, that's like the village. You go off and people see you off, but you carry the home. And for my father, I thought for many years I thought he was illiterate. To put the years through college, which we were raised where we all had whatever it was, our family would work hard, and so mother would put me through college. My brother, he wanted to be who's old to go to the monastery, so my brother went to the monastery, and my sister was becoming a nurse. Well, what happens is that my brother is also responsible for me being here because my brother lost his dream. Okay, my brother went to the monastery in the early 60s. Okay, my mother kept writing him letters to tell him to come home. And I realized what happened. My father didn't have a full-time job. My son was the oldest. So my mother was in a certain way said, you can come back here to help the family. And so after my brother gave up his dream, I came back and he told me, because he was my first advice, if you want to be a writer, get as far away from my mother as possible. And that's why I never went back to New York. And then my brother, he saw what happened to him. And he said, I don't want it to happen to you. And so that's how you become a writer in terms of you don't go be off, but realize that if you're here and you're sitting in the dorm and stuff like that. And I'll mention Hakeem, because I remember Hakeem and I were across campus. This is before Hakeem went to school. And I never had this. And you sometimes be sitting on that yard, and you take that for granted. But some people, you're working class family, you're sitting on the yard, you're going to class. Your mother is working hard for you to go to class, and I don't want to go to class. I have to teach you. You better suck it up. you know, because you were part of a family in which the education is very serious.
Never lied. Because I was the same. I mean, well, I'm the oldest, but I had to leave. Like, my parents were splitting up. There was no home for me to come to. So I never went back. And I mean, I go home for family stuff and visit my friends and things like that. I've never lived back home since I left. Been out here for 12 years by myself. Because there was nothing to go back to. They didn't want me to leave. They wanted me to do what your brother did. And I said, no, I can't do it. It's too often that this story happens in Black families where one sibling can do something and the other sibling has to stay home. Or
well, you know, when you see it all, and this is the side of the coin. See it now, and we have families who are, you know, taking care of the parent. Say, for example, because you live in a city, taking care of your mother or father, on whoever is in that area. And they'll tell you, okay, you're off doing such and such DC.
Yeah.
I'm, you know,
yeah.
And what happens, if you have a strong family bond, you look up, you're arguing with your brothers to be very close to, but now because of caretaking of an elder, you know, and being a caretaker, you can forget about writing. A caretaker, where you're just looking for the right word, patience, and you know, trying to publish and things of that sort. When you are a caretaker for a loved one, it is very, very demanding. I learned it because my sister sees we had to relocate her from Yonkers here, so I became the caretaker for my sister. And I'll give you this specific because it's kind of funny. But what happens is that I saw the dementia set, and that's a very painful illness, right? So I found my sister in a nice facility, and this is a thing too. No matter how much you save, when you look at the cost of a place that you would say I feel comfortable putting my one in, that stuff is per month is expensive. So if you look Howard's salary, you think that you're gonna be able to, and you're 75, and then you're gonna live to 99. Oh no, it's gonna go quick. Okay. But what happened with the caretaking nation? I take my sister to get a memory, you know, all these tests and stuff like that, and the place we stay, they put a split bra on her, right? So I have to take my sister from the place we stay to the hospital. I don't know whether she's gonna hug herself because you're dealing with that, you know, and getting out. So I get to the clinic, and the woman, oh, your appointment at 2:30. Oh, no, you don't understand. I had to get my sister dressed, this and that. You know, and she was kind of saying, okay, well, I think I can put you in people. Okay? So now I'm aware that they've been nuts, and so I'm hurrying sister through the thing. You realize, okay, got a mammogram, and now we're trying to get out. She's in a sports bra, and she can't process with your left arm. Can't do that. So what happened? We're arguing like we used to argue when we were small. I said, just put your thing. She said, no. And then she came to me and she said, you're a man. Don't you know how to put a bra on? I said, no, I don't know how to take them off. and we were arguing like that. And then I lost it. I just lost it. We're not even going to wear bra. And so my sister, who couldn't walk, when I took the bra away from her, stuffed it in the bag, she said, my boobs. And she's walking, and she spit out the money so fast. You know, I mean, what happened? I'm thinking about it. I lost it. I was not patient, okay? And what happened is, years later, I'm in a restaurant on 18th Street, Indian family, and there were two sisters arguing because no one wanted to take them to the bathroom. You know? Arguing. I said, here's the mother, she's sitting there, and the daughters were arguing. They didn't want to take the mother. I said, you know, I don't want to be like that, you know. But I saw, in my experience, I lost my sister. Okay? I lost my sister. My sister took care of me with a small help. And being a caretaker It's what we want to fix. All of us, and it's another skill that you really learn, and it's hard. And that's what's going to happen. There are many of us who are like, if you're a child in a city like this, I'm concerned about women who are single, don't have the relatives, okay? What's happened to them when they get older? Who's going to be their caretakers? And then just the overall optics of that we saw during the pandemic. People who are the caretakers are not making money, okay? The turnover in homes and stuff is ongoing. And so these are the things that, now when I'm, what I'm writing about the issues of sickness and health, because those are the issues that are as important as, change.
Yeah, and our community often burdened with doing it on our own versus everyone else. Right. I watched both my mother and my grandma do that for my grandma's done it for her deceased husband, her sister, her elder sister. My mom did it for dad, and unfortunately for my mom's mom, who's also passed now, nobody saw her illness in time to take care of her. And until we moved her down to North Carolina, and then she lived her last days in the home in the pandemic.
Right.
And so it's like, I think we're so busy trying to survive that we don't necessarily think about what's going to happen.
Well, see, this is what I'm saying, but we're here in a bookstore, okay? When you look at it, these stories that, I think of Marina Corbin, she has a novel really dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia, and just the toll that it takes on family. So if you look at how important our books are,
yeah.
Okay, like I say right now, I know in the next years there's going to be a Latino writer who's going to write about across the border. Okay, you just know the stories are going to be written. Okay, and so we prepare for it. But what happens is that there are books here that, if taught properly, can help us in terms of getting through these things. This is a way in terms of storytelling stuff. The books are already there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it has a lot to do with, how you can read like children's book and realize, okay, you can read that for an adult, because what happens, the children's books are going to teach you the ethics, morality, okay? And we have a number, just a couple of people who are very important to me in terms of the Eloise Greenfield, Shambell Mathis, and they would tell you things that when you're writing a children's book, you got to make sure you get it correct, okay? Because what happened, you could have, I remember Shambell talking about, there's an award-winning book, I think it's called The Trumpet. In their pictures, the boy's playing trumpet, but he's jumping on the couches and stuff. So Shambell said, okay, that's acceptable behavior, okay? And so what happens, you have to sometimes correct that. And I learned from that, where this past week I had a program, and a woman had a granddaughter come up to me. She's like 8. She had her phone in her hand, and she went to shake my hand. I said, oh no, I'm going to move your phone from your right hand to your left hand so you can shake my hand. I was just thinking that I'm thinking about Shambell Mathis in terms of, okay, if I'm a writer, these images are going to convey certain behavior that's acceptable, okay? Or how Eloise Greenfield have a young child who is in a wheelchair. It's just, and have friends. It's not about a child with disabilities. It's the fact that when you look at that image, this young girl, I think the story of Alexis, I think might have been the title of the book, but Eloise Greenfield, important. Because now what happens, I'm a parent, I walk into the store, the books are there for me. See, if we look at the 1970s, this is when I was a writer, okay, look at all the women who were poets who decided, I'm going to write children's books because I see the books for me, from kids. I mean, talk about Lucille Clifton. Lucille had a lot of children. Nikki Giovanni, Sonia Sanchez, Right. And what happened, these are mothers who said, okay, I go to the store, I see the books. I'm a writer, I will write those books. You see? And that had a lot to do with, I became a writer because I just saw a need to bridge different communities.
You so much that I'm like, I was gonna ask you this, but then you're. I want to go back to how you started writing, but also your peers in the writing community as you were growing up, and how that influenced your writing then, and how you say it influences you.
Well, my peers, I was a literary activist. I tried to provide a lot of opportunities for my peers. Okay, so when I started my Ascension series in 1974, a lot of writers there, I gave them their readings. Okay, then I began to branch out and I began to bring certain writers from New York who I felt needed readings outside of New York City. So when I go back, I started bringing some of the Puerto Rican writers out of New York, Pedro Perez, Sandy Neves. I started bringing some of the Asian writers, like Chan, Fei Chang. But I always felt that as a literary activist, I could help my peers. The problem with that is that many of my peers didn't know anything about my own poetry. Because people just, ask me to get a reading for me, and that was a thing in terms of one with your peers see you a certain way. Okay. I think now that because this is 2023, I've moved in where I'm the elder. So if I was to go back and look at a poster from one of the 1973, before like a writing conference at Howard, I might be the only people living on that poster because everybody thinks. The same way you go across the street, how University bookstore, the mural in that store. I think the only two people who are living is me and Eleanor Triller. And Ball, Brown, everybody else is in that mural. That when you use the steps to the second level, how University bookstore. When you go to Howard,
you haven't seen it.
No, I think it's for the record. What happened, and I did what I was going to do. I was going to create the trail because there's about maybe 18 places in the city, and which is not my face, my face represented.
Wow.
You see, but people don't realize that. Like if you go on the street here to Petworth, you get on Metro. It's the Petworth Metro. Well, there's a beef in front of the metro station there. What might be on a leaf? You don't realize it. Or if you're at DuPont Circle, there's a you come up Circle Q Street exit, there's a women quote. But then the bench, which my poem was around the bench, because the poem was for people who were caretakers who lost their loved one to AIDS.
Wow.
And so you have that, and then on Urban Street there's La Casa, there's a shelter. You go in that first, there's this girl. It's in there. You go West Boys. Annie has a picnic back in the room. Got a Columbia Maryland and one. But there's murals around there that people don't realize that, okay, well, he's still living. But what I wanted to do is work with Soul Society and have it where if you went to the house bookstore, the trail, you know about Sue Brown, you know about all the people in that mural. So it wouldn't just about me, it would be about the neighborhoods and things like that sort. Or like, for example, the bench that's at one circle. When I was writing that, I had to think of two people who died of AIDS. One was Essex Hemphill, who is key. Essex Hemphill is as important to black gay men as Audre Lorde was to black lesbian women. He's just important. You cannot get through gay literature without Essex Hemphill. You can't get through the cultural war. Or some of his work, when people like Jesse Helms and others was complaining about the endowment money, it was Hemphill's like poetry and films like Untied, which made the film so controversial. And then Jason Gator, who's a white performance artist, he was the first person who I knew who died of AIDS. And because I was big archived and I was literary activist, and he was dying, he gave me, he turned all the copyright over to him of his work, and then he also made the first contribution to the archives that said, which was a deal. But he made first donation, and because he was dying, he said, "Okay, I'm really concerned about what's going to happen tomorrow." And that educated me as a literary activist. Many of our writers don't have wills. Okay, many of us have libraries, and we don't know what's going to happen to the books. Okay, now one of the things I'm known for is I have a very extensive library, but I've created like ebooks and e-books, and so I've given a lot of books to Henley, Gonzaga, Parkmont School. Okay, I mean, in fact, Parkmont School is a school where if you go in that school on the second level, there's a picture of me because they created an E section because I gave them a whole bunch of poetry books. Just didn't dump books on me. I told them, okay, here are books of poetry during, say, April National Poetry. If your students to do a report on a poet, let me know what poet they're doing on, and maybe that person's living, I can put them in touch with that person. Okay, so yeah, it's not just borrowing a book, it's the whole experience that, hey, I can cut the author. So I didn't want to, I want to make sure that giving books that are going to be used, okay, so I find a whole thing for teaching stuff. But this thing that I said, okay, I know many writers have these libraries, but what am I going to do with collections? They say my family is pretty much, my son and daughter, not really, this is the first edition of The Blue is Eye. Unless it's like, what can we get for that, Daddy? They ain't read it, but they figured to convert it into. But I say that in terms for people who hear, that's how we have to think. What happens to family documents, pictures, and that sort? How to preserve those things? The technology there, we still have to, okay, do we have the interest? I mean, I mentioned this. I just have, my father, I said this here, my father's living, but I have the 3 love letters he wrote to my mother. Okay? And you read those documents, you have, I know my father, we lived because of the envelope of that, but these are, every family has that type of history. And you don't have to wait for a writer to come along, but you just have to, okay, I know the importance of this in terms of just family history.
And can you speak more like the importance of being our archives, but also knowing where to put it? Because there are plenty of people. I know there are plenty of Black people that save a lot of stuff. We save everything. Save programs.
We save things, but this was the whole thing. I don't know where you want to give it to, but especially now. And I'll say what I learned from my friend Yasalam in New Orleans. Yeah, Katrina. When she happened, people like, look at my house. Call me. I said, Comic had a really extensive record collection because he had a show with the lady. I said, what happened to your collection? He had it in the warehouse. Yeah. Ethelbert went down to the warehouse, where I saw where that water line was. I just turned right around. It was all gone. Okay. And what happens now, we have to really concern like where we're living. Yeah. Okay. Every time I'm hearing about a person losing somebody's, work, it's a real concern. But what happens is that pieces of stuff have to be preserved and have to be done a certain way. Some stuff is really valuable. So you may have all the magazines that's not, but so the library, and sometimes what happens, you got that on that saved everything, and this is where it may be valuable to them, but it's not valuable, and you have to have somebody come in and praise things and say, okay, this is important. Some of us have things that might not just be important to the family, but for the city. You saying? You might be in North Carolina, and the son somebody kept is key. The same way with me, some of my friends were founders of the Humanities Council. And one year we decided to do was give money to Black churches. Because Black churches save a lot of stuff, but don't have money to save, cattle properly. But if you give money to church and you have every wedding and baptism or whatever, and you're doing family history, that's priceless. And sometimes some of the churches have a church there. Okay, so you come now doing family history, those documents are extremely important.
Can you speak to being a literary activist? You kind of touched on it with the poem you said on the bench at which was for
caretakers who died, who loved ones who died daily.
Yes, exactly. So, how many times would you say over your writing career that you've had the opportunity to write for an issue like this, and then you see the direct impact of it?
Oh, the only time I really did a poem that, and you can probably Google this. There's one poem that I really wrote that I had, and it was a poem that I wrote for the Archbishop Ethelbert Miller, who was assassinated in Salvador. Will then, if you Google that, because Oscar Miller is a saint now. Happened. A friend of mine, Rich Clark, took that poem and added music to it, and it's just amazing. You know, it's called Wheelman, but it was a one poem that when I wrote it was for a program around El Salvador that was at All Souls Church. So I knew that I had to write a poem that was have a certain refrain because I was going to read publicly. The person that I was relying on is 19 years, that American Marker. So what happens is that there were lines that I was very much aware of in terms of alliteration, that if this was going to be recited in front of an audience, it had to be uplifted. But then when my friend Richard Clark came and put the music to it, it took another level. Okay, but that's, if I had to look at my work, I like that better. Say the Grammy nominee thing that was happening, Black Men Are Precious. I just think that this poem for Ramiro, the land, it's a much better composition. It's just very spiritual, And what happens, you're hearing it as opposed to with the Black Men Are Precious, is a feel that goes with that.
Yes.
So the images of black men and the line is really strong.
It is.
But I think that where the visual carries the poem. And that's why when I look at Lamar and a number of other the video is the work. You go back and look at a number of people. The videos were very, very strong. The person I saw that Lady Gaga. I saw that Lady Gaga videos was strong, and that's why if Lady Gaga was going to show up, somebody was always thinking like, was she going to come out of an egg? Was she going to be able to do that? Until actually when sang at the Super Bowl, and then she started doing the Tony Bennett, and really said, okay, this woman can sing.
Oh yeah, she can sing.
She can act. So what happened? But if you look at how they started, videos were carrying. Well, not just acting; they just enhanced, the lyrics. So if you go back and look at certain hip hop, those are really good videos, and some of those people went on were like filmmakers. This is why we talked earlier about Baraka. We want the video by Ross Baraka is like, whew, that's strong with the choreography and stuff like that. Yeah. And you can package that. And sometimes the visuals and things are working so well. Yeah. That you just say, well, this is memorable.
But I think too, since you led us to Black Men Are Precious, I was actually going to talk about that soon too. Stay on its own. I feel like regardless of the video, I think the video in some ways not like the video looks like just a bunch of videos.
Right. It is that video.
Like the video, like
it's the poem. Really,
yeah. The poem. Pressure. If you haven't heard, what happens? It's a bad for years, and actually it was dealing with during the pandemic. Okay. And so some kids looked at it that way, but it was also the fact that I was very aware of so many friends of mine, black men dying. Okay, this example, if I look at just the last few months, in terms of Sam Gilliam, Stovall, African artists, guys who were just beautiful men, very generous with their own time, and they're going. And then you look up in terms of, I've had a number of friends. They lost a son to suicide. Okay, also dealing with the loss of police violence. And then it's just to catch up with you. The the stroke,
Yeah.
you know, and we try to get around it, but sometimes it's too late. You know, when we're dealing with the black community, what eventually happens is that some of us have illness because of where we live. We live close to factories in North Carolina. We live in Mississippi. What happens? It takes its toll.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what happens because we have the money, proper health care, we're not diagnosed early. Okay. And then throwing on top of eating habits, all due respect to Elise and this lovely cuisine. But sometimes what happens is that, the quantity takes its toll. And then you're on stress. And then the other thing which needs to be recorded, no one wants to talk about what is the impact of in terms of just racism.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what. Under this, laid that out for me.
Yeah.
Under this, the interview roast was so comprehensive in everything you just discussed.
Yeah, and nobody wants to really explain that. And then okay, how do you measure it, And I'll tell you what I saw. I was down on Street, Chinatown, and it was a friend of mine, and there were that many people in the restaurant, but it was buffet. And what happened was older woman into an argument with the person who run the restaurant. You're just wasting food. And the woman was saying, I'm not wasting food. I didn't put, And to hear she was just hurt. When my friend left the restaurant, we were outside, and the woman was not far from the restaurant. She was talking to herself. I didn't take the food. And this was during lunch hour. And I said to my friend, if we just pass, you think she's crazy. But we saw what took place in the restaurant. It was, and what happened, she's been scarred. Okay? She's not going to rest. You can see she walked out and she's like, no, this was an old woman, and somebody accused her stealing food or eating much food, and she just hurt. Okay? And you look up, okay, what price that he's going to take on the same way. There's one other one. 16th Street bus is coming, and two young white girls who are standing, in front of the Rosa Parks seat. So there's an older black man there, And these two white girls are talking about, yes, and I think I'll be going to Paris next week. and what happened, you could see that this woman, she's not going to ever go to Paris. You know what I'm saying? She didn't even get up 16th Street. And what happened, you set the position, and she was annoyed just by the conversation, but the bag was dangling in front of her. So just basically rude. We can see she's going to get home, and the city has changed, and justification for her is going to be this conversation. See? And we're talking about the price it takes on older people. Okay? But then you could be, we'll take boys. And he gets scarred because, he makes little, sometimes garden and a little white one and then calls him an enter and he comes home and, we have to solve that folks. Later. What I'm saying is that, when the boys is affected by that. And if you have children, you never know.
That was real.
Just be silly. Okay, I'll stop.
You're a mess. I can't. Speaking of which, I don't want to get this messy, but I do kind of want to be a little bit messy. A smidge. A tad. So, when I actually reached out to you, I reached out to you to talk about Baba Kalam and the interview you're doing with you next month. Right. But also, you just shared with me, some stories of a certain poet, if you want to talk about it. So I was wondering if you'd like to share.
Well, I think that what happens is that your life gets summarized by literary critics. Okay? And so what happens is the person just did a major article for a major publication, and I look at how the person summarized my life. And this is what I said, we all have to be control of our lives. And what I'm looking at now, not only being literary activist, but I'm realizing I'm a writer of two centuries. Okay? 20th and 21st century. And what happens is that I realized that some of the critics were looking at me in terms of the 20th century. If you do that, then
Thank you.
okay,
Thank you.
okay. If you do that, then the person has a major influence on my life is the June Jordan.
Yeah.
Many people realize that you go and look at some of June's poems, you have to put the poems together because sometimes the poem responds. I do recall in one of her books, because I was there, that she received Paul Robeson's Lifetime Achievement Award in Philadelphia. And she began her talk by saying, I want to thank three people, my mother, my father, and Ethelbert. Our lives are sort of connected in that way. If you pick up one of my books, she's written one of the introductions. She was a key person, in terms of my life. And then what happens is that I say all things, okay? So June's letters that she wrote to me, University of Minnesota, okay? All the letters I wrote to her at Harvard. What happens, that's a defining relationship. Some of the poems that are very important, I edited. So for example, a poem about my rights. In my eyes, it's the original, okay, with the changes. If you look at the letters critically, you see something that is very important in terms of June's life. I remember when June, and this is how history. I remember when June was kicked out on Long Island, and then she came here at one of the writers' conferences, and she read a poem about my rights, and it was hushed because to be that public in terms of that, it was just like whoa. What I find is not just this courage to being at Howard and read this poem, but when I look at the letters, he was writing letters, and you would say, okay, this devastating, there might be a gap, but no, it's like she just kept doing her work, and so there's a message there. The same way if you look at the real book of Alice Walker books that Boyd edited before her death. If there's one thing that you can come away as a woman, Alice Walker knows how to manage her money. Really knows how to manage money in terms of property and stuff like that. And maybe that's because of what she learned from Dora Hurston's life. Okay? But I feel that this is things that are very important. But many times our lives are connected to people, and someone needs to come and talk about that. Just for a record, I would say, one writer that we lost, who I really admire, was Greg Tate. Okay. Now, Greg Tate, he was here. First, he was all around was Thulani Davis. Okay. Now, people may not know Thulani Davis as well as they might know Tazaki Shange, but when I knew them, there were three. They were the Satin Sisters: Tazaki Shange, Thulani Davis, and Tara Hagedorn. But what happened is that Greg just followed Thulani when she was teaching her friends. Then Thulani left D.C. and went to New York and became senior editor of Village Voice. That opened the door for many of Greg's key articles like on Miles Davis and stuff came through the Voice, and that had a lot to do with this just changing his life. But you never know. Like my case, June Jordan, but they're writers affected by other writers. Okay, and you have to know relationships. Anyway, there's critical reading. When you get a collection of work and you see some citations, some initial, who is that for?
Yeah.
You see, you just can't skip it over the same way we pick up a book and we skip right over quotations or whatever. And Eric, I felt that you got the author put that there for a reason. Okay, this poem is dedicated to so once you say that, whoa, this is very important. I can't, or the blurb, who wrote the blurbs, and this is where you need critical reading. But this is when you look at the relationship between writers, you've got to really examine that. Okay, and this is come in where look up. I think Cornell was at one time linked to Michelle. Okay, that's very important. You could, you had Alice Walker linked to Robert Allen. So you've got to look at the relation and you say, what influence does this have on this man? What have on this woman? their work. One of the things I was curious about is after Walker wrote Temple of Familiar, I was curious as to whether she was influenced by the fact that I gave her a copy of The King of Columbus by Adam Van Center as a gift. I remember she was like saying, well, this book is enough. But, it's okay, like John Coltrane did and wrote Love Supreme. You know what I'm saying? So what happens is that, you never know how, in relation to writers, what is being shared, information, books, things of that sort. It can change people's lives. But if you're the critic, you have to come behind and put that puzzle together.
Do you do you think that as far as like writing and publishing, do you think that we have the same agency to criticize our writing?
Well, what happens is that we need to be able to have that type of criticism within our own community.
To that point, if we are not publishing a majority of what is coming out of our community, do we have the same agency to critique it?
Well, yeah, I think what happens, it's a little different now because one time there was the need for critics. Okay, but that's a singular voice. We now go through a thing where, because of social media, if we get the like, then it must be good, and why does it listen to what you say? You're just a person. So what happens is that, our way of really commenting on things, we've lost that. In fact, if you're critical of something and people don't agree with you, they could drop voice out, or you become the issue. Okay? But what happens? I still maintain there's a need for critical voices to sort of help explain, not the personalities. Sometimes what happens, our criticism in our community winds up being personal.
Yeah.
We playing the dozens on somebody.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, no, it's about what you wrote, who you are.
And I think because of that we don't always take criticism at all. Because we're like, well, are you just trying to yell at me? Or are you really trying to give me something constructive? So the lines are so blurred that we're like...
Sure. And then one's going to say, who gives you the right, the authority? Who makes you the anchor? Okay. And that's the thing that we have to wrestle. And this is what I know. There's always a need to look up, okay, we have all this work coming up right now, but then where are the critics? Where are the people? Where is the forums? We have different podcasts and stuff. But, one time, if you were theater, there was a person who could come to your play and make or break your play. Mm-hmm. But that person had a standard in terms of their knowledge. They were the critic of whatever, so New York Times. Right. But at least you knew that, reviews said something. Okay, we really didn't have that, especially for us, because we didn't have. Sometimes, because a white publisher would put out a book, the distribution, those books got more attention than something that maybe Hakeem would have. Okay, it's just the way like films. You're a black filmmaker, even like Spike Lee. Your film's going to be on less screens, and so what happens is, in terms of sales and stuff like that, yeah, it's going to be less money because it's less screens. Right. Okay. And then it's not distributed as well as say the other film because of the distribution networks.
So the question is, we push to have our screens be for us, like by us.
You have to do both. It's like sort of like you got to do both. We're not outside of we're not outside of America. We're pretty much soul of America at times. So our culture is very much part of this big whole. But at the same time, for it to keep going, there has to be, like, say, for example, it's black colleges. They have to be a place where people come together and it's a healthy environment. They can go up and do what they want to do. And that's an issue because what happens is many times, and I remember this is one of the things when Swag was President Howard, if you go back, one of the comments he made, redeveloped the alumni office, okay, because Howard, a lot of people come out doing the undergraduate work. Then they go on graduate work at a white school. Well, white schools, in terms of alumni office, would be sending, graduates, give money. Howard didn't have sort of network. So
when?
So when Swaggart came in,
wow.
yeah. Well, there's one thing that Swaggart did.
Deep.
Yeah, well, one thing that Swaggart did, he improved our university alumni office. You see, because what happened, people will give money they asked to give.
Yeah.
And Howard, everybody ever sent me a little note to give to Howard.
Right.
Okay. And many times people turn around to they get to where the school that, Princeton or whatever, and it might be a white institute giving money because they're so and so, but they're asked.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it might be changed now because historic black school is popular again. Okay.
Right.
But at one time, people were giving money back. That's where they got their graduate degree.
It's a mess. This whole thing is a mess.
And this music that we're going to have. Drive the mess out. That's cleansing.
Absolutely. I feel like, I don't know if you've seen, well, I'm sure you've seen, we have the writer's strike and the publishers were striking last year, like HarperCollins, people were striking, a lot of people and publishers are striking, and a lot of them were Black. And I guess my whole issue now is that we keep fighting to push into their institutions, and it's like, okay, we've been here. We established that we've been here. We're gonna be here. We're not going anywhere. At the same time, particularly in probably the most important industry, publishing, which is very undervalued, even though it influences absolutely everything. Why are we pushing so hard to get more, to take up space in their institutions when they obviously want us there?
Well, keep in mind, if you look at, let's say, Hollywood, okay, you look at the fact that blaxploitation film takes some of the industry. Then what happened many times, we wind up saving the institute and we don't reap the benefits. You could look at the development of Fox, okay? Well, before, the first have like a Black president and stuff like that, in living color and stuff like that. If you want to progressive Black show, you turn on Fox. Right? And what happens is many times those units will use Black people to get them back in that. Now, I'm glad you mentioned the strike, because that is very, very important. The strikes that occur, like the writer's strike, or the strikes that occur with like football players or baseball, those are the ones that you really want to watch, okay? Forget about how much money people are making, okay? What happens many times into working conditions, okay? Or let's take, for example, because of the writer's strike a couple of years ago, that's how Donald Trump became the president of the United States. Because what happened, the writers who were the shows, I said, we don't need to pay them. And so happened, no writers, and we have reality shows. We don't need writers. We just follow, somebody around. Whitney Bobby Brown or somebody like that. You don't have to have any writer. You see? And so what happened, you get The Apprentice. You get these type of shows filled in that void. Okay? And then what happens, okay? When you look at strikes, what are they doing? They're like saying, we write these things. Now you're going to turn them into DVDs and all of that, and we don't get any money. Okay, so now it's streaming. We're writing things, and we're not getting any money. And this is an international market.
Exactly.
Okay? So what happens as soon as we try to control things, okay, and this is what it's an international market. Okay, so not like, we can just, call on Southeast or Harlem or something. Those days are gone. Okay, it's international. What happens is that now the future of terms of control is now resources in countries, whether it's the Congo, this in Haiti, and stuff like that. Those going to be the places, okay, they're driving stuff. Okay, we're going to be forcing people to land because we need mineral for the batteries, for the hydrocarbon. If we don't control that, okay, and I've mentioned this, which is very important in the bookstore. If you go back to Korean books, Yao and Simba, okay, they had reached a point before they had this agreement, but they were getting, well, something Yao and said, we want to get a warehouse. They were thinking like Garvey, we're going to have a warehouse. And what happens is that if you look at the music, especially in terms of hip hop, a lot of that was pretty much the audience. That money, if you take away certain hip hop and Jay like that, that's the economy of that community. Okay, that's those in many cities. Take LeBron James. How many people LeBron James has affected just in terms of putting schools now and saying nice little films and stuff? Yeah, that's very, very. Or Spike Lee. Look how people came through his film. Okay, but what happens is that these are the things that many times they redefine the mainstream. Okay, and what happens? We can't separate them.
That's true. But then look at Perry. He built his life off of black money. Only black money.
Right. And what happens is that, and then okay, Tyler gave you certain types of film, and then you turn around and do like a color girl. Okay, so what happens is that here, you for some people say, okay, I'll do these type of films or whatever. The films I want to do, I need the money for. Okay, and see, this is why you have to call certain people out. August is not around, okay, but August was a problem with Eddie Murphy because August was to say, okay, you're going to do Fences, okay, I want a director or whatever. Okay.
No wait, Eddie Murphy produced?
No, he never, because August was saying you can't find. You're not going to get the play. So you see, the person who has control over it now is Denzel Washington.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what happens is that August Wilson was saying, "Hey, yeah, the same concern about the theater. I'm concerned about who's going to interpret my work." Okay. And what happens is that even though we see people who we seem successful, some of them are not the producers. So you look up, I think like Goldie Hawn has more power than the other people. They produce, they can direct, okay, but they don't have the next level, okay, and that's what happens in terms of different people that you look up. They have some real significant, clout within the industry. Key example, Barbra Streisand, okay. Barbra Streisand came out for Spike Lee. Okay, that's a Brooklyn connection. Okay, but Barbra Streisand, she can stay back and she still has that sort of clout if she wants to do something. But because she had that, and then the people that she had, the woman, the brief,
Julie Roberts.
Julie Roberts, right? You know that Julie Roberts campaigning for Denzel. Okay, when you see that the Academy Award, there are people there who is key. Like if you go back to I Spy before the Cosby Show, okay, Rob Hope, okay, there are people who open those doors and stuff. And this is why when I look at literary organizations, let's say look at the Golden, Christian Wright Foundation. Rita changed how we would define a black organization. You look at the beginning of the there were white on her board. Same way you look at when she was on the Penn Fork, she used that model. Cave Canem. Okay, at one time Cave Canem was Cornelius Eady's in-law, and then I think they had a white. But they were saying these black organizations in which, just like it's like the NAACP, there's going to be a white involvement, but black people make the decisions. Okay, and then some things where the white people will pretty much give the money to get it started. Okay, but what happens is these type of partnerships are one that if you're very nationalistic, you may have a problem with that. You say, okay, I don't want to accept any money, Nation of Islam or whatever. But what happens is that some people are saying, okay, if I have to take my goods to the market, I have to pass this border. In the old days, I have to, even though I didn't want to cut off the ties to Mozambique, but the train runs through this way, and I have to cut around apartheid. In the old days, okay. So what happens? Some make that compromise mainstream, and for some people, they say you sold out. Well, no, I'm actually trying to take it to the next level. I'm just aiming as cookies, and I decided, well, I'll give it to the rest of the biscuit, whatever. But what happens? Those are decisions, difficult decisions, What happens is that at the end of the day, you say, okay, is this going to help me reach more people? Is this going to be the thing in terms for the next level of growth? I remember the street, for example, we had a pyramid bookstore. Dario started that. And I thought, okay, the success of that is when it becomes Hadassah and Sons, the family take over the business and we can see those only businesses. And that's, I felt this earlier, it's very hurtful to see those pipes bursting out of Chicago because Hakeem had so much of his time, his money into these things. Okay, now what happens if somebody whose wife comes along and says, okay, I want to buy all the remaining stock? Hakeem probably has to make a decision like, well, do I lose the rest of it? Do I make a compromise? Okay, and it might be a compromise that he may not make with 25 or 30, but then it's a different way in terms of say, okay, I did this and I have to make this decision. And that's different where you say, okay, I can campaign in poetry, but I have to go in prose. Okay, that's a difference. I'm very eloquent in terms of, oh, we should do this, you do that. Exactly. Now you're in the chair, okay, can be completely different. It's a harder decision to make. That's the pros. Okay, it's not going to sweet everybody. It may not be what I want to hear, but at the same time, this is the story. This is the hard fiction that we as a community have to say.
Do
Yes, we do. Now you got your own mic. You can do whatever you want.
I guess I push back on this because I think I'm tired of seeing us do the same things. Like we're like asking to be a part of something we were never supposed to be included.
Well, the first thing that you heard, Barack said this thing that he was talking about African Americans, he was talking about it's a changing saying. We realize that we're doing different things, but we're still caught up. And it's going to be the thing where we're always part of this country. Whatever is going through, we just get rid of that. Okay? That's there. How we make sense out of it? Like, for example, he talked about that first slave that looks up. He's not going back to Africa. That blues begins. And to some extent, we're not just black people, we're blues people. And with it comes a sense of resiliency, okay? Not sadness, because the blues is also joyful. We have to say, okay, how do I take that hurt? How do I take that disappointment and carve it into something I can still live with? Okay? How do I feed family? Okay? You're okay, what do I have to do? Okay, what comes first? How do I survive? I lost my son or loved one to police. Okay? There's something there where you say, okay, I'm gonna run for office. You saw some mothers say, after this, I'm gonna be the mayor. And what happens is that I could probably say, well, you just part of the system and this and that. But she's lost her son. She lost it. She's going to do something about this. Okay, and that would get her up every day. Now I can say, oh, she's married, but nothing's going to happen to her. No, there's the age. Okay, and she had to lose her son for that. And then we say, okay, we're going to say that we're going to get freedom and everything because of we don't want to acknowledge what happened to our families. We're going to do. That's why when they're naming, I always, I sort of changed my name when people taking like African or Muslim names, and I felt that we sort of severed that connection in terms of African American. You might be Anderson from North Carolina, and if you sever that, there's a thing where there's a loss there. Even though you might have a problem with it. Okay? And that's a hard one because you want to rename yourself, you want to open a new chapter, you want to live differently, but at the same time, you cut the umbilical cord. And that's a hard one to do.
I mean, that's real, but it's also like I'm not saying to denounce our Americanness or anything like that. What I really mean is that we are here. We're not going anywhere. But why can't we be here with us, do us, and show it to everyone else?
That's what we've been doing.
But it's not, because they own our stuff. There's plenty of stuff that we don't own. Just like you said about writers who don't leave wills. Okay. Writers who didn't understand their publishing rights, didn't pass down to somebody who could have published it.
We're across the street from University.
Here we go.
Okay? I have from American Studies for 4 years. Trying, well, I'll just begin, not my universe. The more thing I said, I remember clearly when they did doing a university report, priorities. I'm at school. The last, number 75 or whatever, was like the Moreland Spink collection. You mean to tell me, here's a historic school, that the last thing, like an afterthought, would be there? Okay? And so what happened, you talking about do me, one time, and this is why I go into struggle. This is why Howard had the student protest. Because we could be black students in theater and never get to do a black play. Okay? The last place that you knew anything about the blues was Howard University. I mean, so what happened? We could do but you have a hard time. You remember Howard University had one of the best gospel choirs for it.
They still do?
No. Howard University when Howard University Gospel Choir started, and we were foaming in the middle of aisles in Crampton Auditorium, there were a couple of proper Negroes who I would say maybe they were Catholic over there. They have none of this here. What I'm saying is that what happened, it became very controversial. People jumping and stuff like that. But then what happens? Somebody says, "Well, is this what we want to be about?" Okay, this is where you look at historically Howard University. Howard University want to open up a night school. Okay, Howard University want to have the best basketball. We're not really just playing ball. And what happened? That's what you do. Yeah, we would like to do us, but what does us mean? See, because when you look at the education of sort of black culture that which are here after the Civil War, Reconstruction, it is a goal of saying how to take the wretched freedman, the slave, and move him or her into citizenship. It is a movement away from the plantation. It's a movement from everything. You go to the old days, and you can, remember it was a paper test and things like that. There's also the chicken test. Okay, so you had a reception, here, questions like, well, do I use the knife and fork or just put the chicken up? Okay, right.
Are you serious?
Are you serious? You know what the paper bag did, right? And sometimes the paper bag.
No, I'm talking about the chicken test.
The chicken.
The paper bag test.
I remember they had served chicken in the cafeteria at Howard. And at that time, I won't mention the name because it's being recorded, but this was the interim president of the university at that time, right? Chief document. And I was with my friend here, and I had gotten up and he left his plate. And I said to Junior, look at how clean that guy cleaned those chicken bones with a knife and fork. And I said to Junior, I said, anybody that can clean the chicken, that thing with a knife and fork, knows how to kiss ass. What I was saying is that this is the Negro that he definitely would get the money to come to university because he invested the art of cutting the chicken with a knife and fork. You know what I'm saying? This is the thing that if I was in on the stage, August Wilson would do it, we know that I'm telling the truth, okay? And what happens, this is the challenge of our storytelling. And this gets back to people like Hillens and others. You teach the truth to the people, okay? But sometimes the truth is difficult, okay? It gets back to sometimes the movie's bad. The acting is bad, but you don't want to say it's bad. Some of the movies are bad. You're laughing, but they right. And what happens? And what happens is that you're right. When you go back and look at films that people might embarrass them, they're funny. Amos Ian is funny at times. What happens is that you reach a point where, do we want to perpetuate images and stuff like that? You could probably say that some of the acting is better than Martin Lawrence somebody can do, that we really haven't had really great comedians, in terms of the last few years. But what happens is that when you look at some of the actors now, they had a skill. Okay?
A lot of people came through Tyler Perry Studios now.
Well, this is weird when you look at Spike Lee and people like, what happened is that There's a number of movies that I like, but I always tell people, Pittsburgh, Spike Lee made it where somebody wanted to be a filmmaker. I mean, the idea of being a filmmaker. Okay? And so what happened? A lot of people, then the people who came to Spike Lee's movies, okay, who know as an actor or actress, there's certain roles you can't get. Okay? And when you look at the people who are in some movies and what they're doing, and then not just necessarily the screen, the people behind the cameras. Okay? The Ernie Dickinson, others, the Arthur Stafford, the people who go on to other things. See, everybody doesn't have to be in front of the camera. But what happens is that they talk about where am I going to get that experience? Okay, probably a lot of people worked on these, Wilmington Tennis in Zinkova. They got their training, and maybe they work for Kearns or something. They got their training when they were here. I mean, how one time was hanging out some students, things like Tony Brown, the School of Communication, the same way if you mentioned you saw a doctor or dentist that came from Howard or Mary. It was just that type of situation. You talk about somebody with film, it's like Howard, NYU, and what California school out there. And what happens, that's where these institutions have to be pushed to do what we're supposed to do. Howard has to fight for a film, okay? Howard had to fight for like a university press, okay? What happens, you realize that this, I'll give you that story. Okay? I can do it, okay? Howard University Swingun Center probably has material belonging to Kwame and I'm responsible for that. What happened is that I knew June Miller, who just died. Okay, June Miller was the press secretary for after the coup. Okay, so she set up. So we had all material belonging to Kwame. I come back from England, so I was like, wow, and she wants to do this to Howard University. And Howard's like, well, I really want this. This is Kwame Boomer. And to the point that what happened is that it's all this time like, well, don't we want this? And she had everything down. She had Nkrumah's glasses. She had all this stuff, right? And she was conscious that I don't want to live this. I don't want to leave any of this thing in England. She had a consciousness. And then it was taking all these years, for them to agree until she finally got it. But this is where I went. After experiencing that, I told you Milne wanted to turn over the copyright of all of Nkrumah's work to Howard University Press. You know what I told her? No. Was I wrong? Does Howard University Press exist today?
You were not wrong.
Right.
No.
Right. And what happened? Those are tough decisions. See? Now I have to end on this note. Okay. So I'm one of these little Zooms that Paul Coach, bless his, I love him, pulled me together. And I think one thing about my really great car about archives over at GU. I said to the people, I worked at Howard for 40 years, and my mother, with a seamstress background, didn't raise a fool. Based on what I saw, would I leave my collection to Howard University? But that people gave me things that, after a bad storm, I would go to work and open the door and the rain had come to a hole in the ceiling and all the stuff, right? And it was gone. Right? Yeah. Now, this is what happened, talking to people at car, and the guy is like, why is Ethelbert over at GW? And I had to tell him, I said,
what? Why did they dismiss me in 2010?
I had to tell him, if you check, I'm on the advisory for the library, okay? Plus, the archive I helped create, okay? Plus, remember when you guys wanted to digitize your stuff? Who took initiative and say, okay, maybe we can work with Howard University? I'm on the other side. See, somebody, when you look at the civil rights movement, right, and there's Martin Luther King others, you have to say, like, Whitney. Well, while King, sometimes Andy Young was in negotiation, okay, to get things that, through in terms of desegregating, okay? Somebody has to do that, okay? And this gets back to, everything is not going on at Howard, okay? And then what happens is that if you to give your collection, you have to, okay, am I moving out of my basement to somebody's basement that doesn't have any protection? Okay, and climate control. Okay, these are all the issues, right? I could be in Ghana or Togo somewhere, and I think all the stuff that you took should be back there. But I have to concern myself: is there going to be a next week? Is it going to be climate change that we can't control anymore? To the point that I'm putting mass and things at risk. So it's a decision, but at the same time, what happens is you've got to say, okay, there's things that we can do and the things we can do in order to think that there can be a partnership. You see, there's partnership. Everything is to be done in terms of partnership. That's what we're trying to get all these countries together. Here, you cannot solve climate change just by yourself. Okay, when you're dealing with African American culture, you just can't do it by yourself. It's just big. Now, is it a priority? Okay, even within some schools, okay, very historic schools. Howard University still is 2023. You look at all these other, they don't have African studies departments. They thought that was a fad. Okay, and you know that there's a difference between being a history major and then being an Afro American Studies major. The difference, okay. What happens? There are some people traditional who feel that those fields are not serious ones. Okay, so say like gay studies, queer studies, film studies, things like that. So if it's not the whole discipline, they think this is a fad. Okay, what happens is that if we are preserving things, it means okay, new structures, and some of those new structures will come out of partnerships and stuff like that. And we have to redefine what Black organizations.
Ooh, that's a good place.
Sure.
Woo,
okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I want to open it up to y'all for any questions you would like to ask.
They want
to Bob Ethelbert. Jeff always got a question.
I see that, man. How you doing, man? Good to see
right.
you.
I have some, but
The most choice.
so what would be the thing, even though you're removed from Howard for a little while now, what would be the one thing you could say that Howard could do to create a new type of community where it would be truly a capstone for the rest of the Black diaspora?
You know, I tell you, and I made a little reference to Howard University. You know, Howard Press, especially the Public Institute that came out, was really doing some amazing things. That if you look at, I mean, the last class, I think there was several people from like South Africa or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's like if we give X number of people this expertise, you know, in publishing, go back to say like South Africa, where are we after like 5 years? Okay. Same way, for example, if you measure impact of AIDS on the African continent, the loss of people who might be in their mid-30s, 40s, okay, you know, they're lost. There's a lot of things in terms of like Howard, you know, things that were started and never sustained, or what happened, never giving the money. It's a nice jar sustaining it, okay? And I understand that being a president of a certified school is difficult because you have to keep the lights on and you have to do all this thing. But then what we also see, which is the real issue, with many of these institutions, is privatization coming in, see? And change the whole dynamic. So now if we're on the board of these institutions, you know, where does the money come from? Okay, and what we still have a problem within our community in terms of raising the fund our own. This is why the historical model is relevant when you go back and look at Booker T. Washington and Tuskegee. That Rosenwald said, okay, I will give you the money. But Booker T. said, okay, just we will build the school. You see, so that time, yeah, I'm taking what we will build the school. We know how to build schools. So you happen to say that was a very working partnership. And the money coming, and the key thing is we go back to there. Look how Booker T. Washington was able to raise that from the Black community. You see? So you say back then we really had more of a conscience of giving, okay, than we have even today.
Any other room? Anyone else have a question?
Because
Yeah,
I've been for a while.
well, I'll give you two because
mentioned Miller's Rosenwald and Booker T. Washington, um, and that's part of the research that I do. So Julius Rosenwald, who was the owner of Sears,
So not the Rose. This Joe.
Rosenwald.
This is not Rosenwald, not Rosenthal.
Rosenwald.
Okay.
Rosenwald.
Okay, got it.
One of the things they supported very heavily was eugenics, and they brought Booker T. Washington was the sole participant. I think in 1914 at the first Veterans Foundation in Battle Creek, and he was the only African American member there. He understood his position in that particular organization. And I really found a letter where he had invited individuals to come to Tuskegee and to do their work. He died before they actually could come. So it was the next president of Tuskegee who invited them. That one particular study, it was two studies at the same time, going simultaneously. And I think it was at Howard University also. The serological study that was being done outside of the one that was being done on they were also using anthropometric measures on the students, along with the gym coach and the physical education were working with them where they were taking measurements of all students. And they were using measurements basically to try to prove the inferiority.
Yeah, that's what was happening. Eugenics movement was taking place.
Right. So that would turn into our standardized testing and what we continue to do now. How do we, as a community, say to these Black institutions? I recently met all the presidents of the finance, and I met with the Congressional Caucus. How do we, as a community, say, look, this is something that's still going on right now in real time? I think your friend at, I think she said she at Princeton, you introduced me to it, down Union Nation. She's a prolific writer. I think of her name. She is at Princeton. She's at one of the Ivy Leagues.
You weren't talking about Elizabeth Alexander at that time. Yeah. She's at Princeton.
I think she's at Princeton. I can't seeing her in my head. I see her face, and I saw her.
She's an artist. I know
you know, I can't think of it. I don't know why I can't think of her name right now. But she has done some marvelous work in this particular area. This is great forward, not so much academic, but just talking about. So the question is, how can we get universities? Because I spent a lot of time with President Frederick explaining something that was pretty simple to him, being a medical doctor, around the fact that we're losing hundreds of millions of dollars in permanent funding for the university. This one subject matter that's still going on. We get these HBCUs to see that, wait a minute, we can change and create a permanent funding base. Right here, if we stay focused on our own history,
sure,
and looking at the.
But the thing about it, just shortly, is that if you look at the missions of these different schools, they have different interests. They have different interests in terms of where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have a tendency of thinking, at Howard University, but we're just Washington D.C. You're dealing with some of the other schools. Some of them for enrollment. You recall it was a couple of years ago that the schools had a hard time to keep the lights on. Like Fish was a good example. It's very difficult because when you look at sort of glass schools, I don't think it's changed. Many of the people in the leadership are necessarily the most progressive Okay, keep in mind, many universities are still conservative institutions. Okay, we started out this thing about like 1968. We just take Howard, moves Howard forward. It's the student presence. Okay, if you look at Felicia Rashad and others, they're very active when they were on the board of trustees, but there was opposition. While they were on the board of trustees, I mean, they you saw that you would Felicia was phase out the arts and science. Okay, they brought it back after the success of Panther, and Chad was the Panther speaker. What happens is that many times when you look at these institutions, they're conservative institutions. Okay, and they're not progressive. And what happens, we deal with other institutions, it doesn't work that way. And some of them are more concerned about their regional presence, okay? And some of them has to realize, okay, I got to deal with them. I got to deal with them coming in. And what happens is that's an ongoing. I remember, I think Harvey still had President Hampton, okay? When someone would say, we'd like to take the job, he said no, because that's too hands-on. If you see me on campus, I'm not doing my job. I got out there raising the money. And for some of the people in these positions, that's a learning job. It's very hard to raise the money, on a consistent basis before you begin to do anything else. Okay, you might say you want to undertake a study, okay, but then somebody says, okay, where's the new dorm or the new football field? And you've got to make those decisions and say, okay, and I come back to what I was saying. Look at some of these studies. Things dealing with African American, it's like a lobotomy. Okay, it's a lobotomy, and that's the problem. And trying to move that up, 85 to like say 55, it's going to be a real struggle. Okay, this is why it's an ongoing struggle. That's why I think of people, April Silver and others like that, who are very strong student activists, still looking at, Felicia Michelle, these are the people who have to be on the boards before they can undertake the thing that you want. But what do we? If you look at the board, beginning with how, look at the corporate press representation. Okay, and those are companies basically that we don't control. Okay, and I remember every time at one board meeting, they're getting drink because they were drinking Coors beer. Somebody was drinking Coors beer. I mean, that's the interest that you see. Harvey, I think, formed a partnership with Pepsi. That if you're in the dorm, why is it Pepsi? Yeah, keep that in there, okay? And he took pride that he brought that money in. But you're a Pepsi campus, you say, and that's the thing. Some of these companies know that if I can buy to that, you with your family and Safeway or whatever, you reach for that Coca-Cola. Oh no, it's like your AK or Delta. All of a sudden you don't buy that because it started when you were undergraduate. And these schools, these presidents have pretty much said these are the things that have to do to keep the
Nail.
Yeah.
No, her name is Nail.
Oh,
I thought you were Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you. Thank y'all for coming tonight and listening to our conversation. Thank you, Ethelbert.
Thank you very much.
Bless us with your presence. And if you would like to close out with just a small little poem for us, you would just to.
If I can find it.
It's a little taste of folks.
What I'll do, I'll have a poem. One of the things that when Sterling was living, I found it interesting. He would always end his readings, a reading of strong men. But then I did research where he used to end his reading with a laugh. And strong men, which is much more. That's what they don't come by one, they don't come by two, but he used to end with that. But this was this poem. This was sort of my signature poem called "Divine." I wish I had loved you years ago. I would have loved you like Langston loved jazz, and Bearden loved songs. I would love you like Langston loved rum, and the blues loved muddy waters. I would have loved Douglas loved to read, and Garvey loved rays. I would have loved you like Zora loved birds, and Du Bois loved songs. I would love you like Lewis loved boxing, and Mahalia loved singing. I would have loved you like Carver loved peanuts, and we loved poems. I would have loved you like Jim loved Lorraine, and Ozzy loved Ruby. I would have loved you like Martin loved Jesus, and Malcolm loved love. That's just a thing, you could take a poem like that and use it in Black History Month, because if all those individuals, you would say, okay, middle school, you should know each one of those individuals, and use them ones that don't get is Lorraine Hansford. You know, that's the one that some people miss. They know the Phyllis Lee members of boys, but Lorraine Hansford was very close to the ball.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, man.
I'm doing fine. God got me up in here saying you the